Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I am your host, Phil Bakke. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Mika Burrell. Mika, how we doing tonight?
Doing well, Phil. Sunday night, the first game is behind us, so we had to get on the mics right away because it's game 1 of 3 this week. So just 2-footed into the new season here. So
yeah, no rest whatsoever. Straight out of the gate, it's like season's back. You're feeling good, and it's like not only is it back, it is back with a vengeance.
Exactly.
3-game week right out the gate.
I can only imagine what Brian and his charges are feeling, but yeah.
Yeah, this it's an intense week, and I mean we don't have Christian on the podcast tonight because Christian's in Cancun.
Yeah. I don't think, he didn't plan to be in Cancun. So
no.
it's one of those, it's like, imagine having a family emergency in Cancun. Like, it could be worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's there, but I'm sure he'll be on next time with us or, Saturday something.
Yeah. So it will just be me and Mika tonight, but a little bit of admin first. If you are starting season 5 with Locomotive and starting season 5 by finding us, first off, we're glad you're here. Secondly, if you want to continue to find us or any of that stuff, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. I just took a look around and we are all on all of them, pretty much.
Yep. Anywhere
you get your podcasts. So go ahead and subscribe. If the platform allows you to rate and review and you enjoy the podcast, let us know. We really do appreciate that, and we're just trying to get this to as many Locomotive fans as possible. So appreciate everyone for the love early this season, and we have a piece up on Patreon as well. I published what I'm calling tactical takeaways, so it's going to be a little sort of tactical breakdowns of the matches. I'm going to try to do it for every single one. I might end up having to bunch some together in some of these short weeks, but I am going to try to stick to one for every match, and those will be up on our Patreon. It's live now for patrons, but it'll unlock for everybody on Wednesday morning. So if you're waiting for that, you can read the tactical breakdown right before we head into this Wednesday night game against Colorado Springs, which we will get onto a little bit later. Aside from that, I think, does that cover the admin?
I think that's all the admin. Yeah, the tactical takeaway was great. It helped me understand what I saw. So, yeah, if you can spare $2, subscribe to our Patreon. All the money we make goes right back into the show. Like, we literally reinvest everything. But if you can't, then like Phil said, it unlocks, and we never want to hide any of our content from anyone like forever.
For sure.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
The I guess the one last piece of admin and shout outs and all that stuff, we actually did get a little bit of a shout out on the broadcast of the game. I guess I specifically did about a watch along that happened many years ago now, back in the 2019 season, if you can believe it. But thanks to Colin and Duke Keith, Colin Deaver, now the analyst in the booth alongside Duke Keith.
He was fantastic.
Gotta say, yeah, really great job.
I rewatched the game because obviously I was there covering it, but I rewatched it to listen to him, and he was very good. He said he was nervous, and I'm like, well, I certainly cannot tell because you're a professional. No. So
yeah, he's a natural. They did a great job. Hopefully all the audio stuff gets ironed out before the next match, because obviously that was a bit of a bummer with the levels being so low. But
if you're local, you can watch on KTSM, so it's fine. Now that they're the partner of the club for broadcasting. But yeah, ESPN Plus got to get it together. Yeah. They need to sort out their admin, because last night's broadcasting was shocking. Not just on our game, but like a lot of games throughout the day. And that's unfortunate, because It's opening day. Like, there should be some pomp and circumstance. Like, dot your I's, cross your T's, you know. But anyway.
The Seriously Loco match review. Well, yeah, with all that being said, Locomotive opened the season last night with a 1-0 loss to Sacramento Republic in El Paso. It was a Russell Cicerone goal that sunk Locomotive, the new man scoring on his debut for his new club. And Mika, I mean, overall, obviously a lot of stories here, a lot of things to kind of break down. But in terms of your general reaction to the game, it felt like, and I mean, it was defined by really just two big chances, one at either end, you know, one for Locomotive early on, one for Sacramento, which they were able to convert. It felt like that was kind of the story of the game, was both teams spent a lot of time kind of sparring, feeling each other out early season, just working through their own fitness, working through their own tactics. But at the end of the day, like, it was the two big chances that kind of told the story of this game.
Yeah, definitely. I think Sacramento Republic were ruthless with the chance that they did get, and maybe there's some blame to apportion to Locomotive for how that chance was defended. I think Brian Clarhaut said as much in his post-match press conference. But yeah, overall, my kind of big picture view of the game is, you know, there were 4 debutants. You know, there's chemistry that needs to be built. There's fitness that needs to be built. I think the preseason that we had this season was better than last year in some respects. But, yeah, just a lot of new faces, a new coach, new man in the technical area, trying to get his ideas across. That takes time, you know. And, you know, like we said at the end of last season, we're having to go through, like, this transition again. So you're going to hear it takes time a lot, and I know that's grating for some, but it is the truth. But, you know, as far as the football is concerned, I think there was a lack of quality maybe, and that's no disrespect to the players that did don the blue shirt for us last night. Just in terms of who you expect to be in our best 11, we had some people missing. Lucho Soniak, chief among them, of course. And then just, you know, kind of, I would say lack of quality, and then just an adaptation, if you will, to the way that Brian Clarhaut wants this team to play and to function. I think that's still being worked on. So naturally, you know, things were gonna break down, and you know, when we get on to Sacramento's goal, we could talk about that and say how, you know, maybe there is an understanding between players that is still being worked on. So. By no means was it a disaster, I think. One thing that I was looking for personally from this first game, and from this first set of games really, is just being solid first and foremost. And, you know, 1-0 at home, not great, but it's not, you know, how we started last season where it was like shipping goals for fun. I think that is the most pragmatic way to build a team, really, is to start from the back and start with being solid and then working on the chance creation. And I think we saw that. So yeah, but by no means a disaster. Would have loved to win on opening night. That unfortunate stat continues for Locomotive. Haven't won on an opening night. I think it's 3 losses, 2 draws or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, 3 losses, 2 draws. And it just so happens that the 3 losses have all come in the new manager's first game. Yeah. So Mark Lowry, John Hutchinson, and now Brian Clarhaut have all lost their first match as Locomotive manager. And so whoever gets that first point in their debut, you know, years down the road, that'll be the stat.
But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of things that need to be worked on, and I think you saw what they're trying to do. I think that was apparent. I think it was apparent to fans, to us. But yeah, not a disaster, but we'll talk about in detail some of the things that went wrong, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right on the money there with the fact that, like, and you can feel it too, I think, in the fan base. Like, there is a cautious optimism that is still there, where an opening night loss can often lead to a lot of like overreaction. And that's not to say that that's wrong. Fans, like, there's emotion tied to these things, and it's not really the fans' job to be measured like in these moments, but they are being measured, and they are being, like, I think they're recognizing, they can see where we're starting from and where we're going. Like you said, it looks like this is the foundation that's being laid to lead to something much I guess further beyond where we're at. Like you said, a lot of understanding being built, and it starts with this lineup in particular. We saw a enforced shift from what Brian Clarhaut trotted out in that last big preseason game against San Antonio. That was a 4-3-3 that obviously included Lucho Solaniak, Peter Petrovic, both of those players missing on the night. So the lineup instead had Benny Diaz in goal, which we expected, but then the shape of the players in front of him was a 4-4-2, or maybe a 4-2-2-2, just sure, because it of the way that the players interchanged, but along
Red
the
Bull
back
vibes. We know,
right?
Brian's a fan, so
right. Well, and on the podcast, Brian Clarhaut talked about his influence by Jesse Marsch, and like him working with
Ralph Rangnick,
with Leipzig as well, and so that's maybe not an accident in the way that the way they lined up, but Mark Navarro and Bence Pavkovic got their start along the back line in their debut, along with Yuma and Nick Hines, and then Liam Rose and Eric Calvillo started it in central midfield with Dennis Kostishin and Emmanuel Sanupe on the wings, out of possession, but really in kind of like attacking midfield roles in possession. And then Ricardo Zacharias and Josue Aron Gomez got the start up front. So, Mika, obviously this shape wasn't the way that you saw them play against San Antonio. Couple of big names missing as well. But on paper, how did you feel about how Brian set this team up?
On paper, it totally made sense. A lot of these players were the ones getting consistent minutes in preseason and were performing. And obviously, I think we were a little surprised because we knew Lucho Solaniak and Peter Petrovic were questionable, but we thought maybe they would push to make sure they made appearances on opening night. But clearly, the technical staff is taking a careful approach. It's a long season, and I can certainly respect that. And Gomez and Zacharias kind of pick themselves, don't they? Because our forward depth is what it is, and they're the two that could deputize for Lucho. I think on paper it made complete sense. And that Calvillo Rose partnership is one that's they are good friends off the pitch, and they are good partners on it. And I think they balance each other out in a lot of ways. Bence Pavkovic, like we knew that he starts. He hasn't had as much preseason as others, to our understanding, but he's come in to be that guy alongside Yuma, the Andrew Fox replacement, if you will, and that shifts Yuma left. Edo Borelli, it just seems like maybe he's still. We know he had that shoulder issue at the end of last season, so I don't know if that's still being treated with kid gloves or anything. And then Mark Navarro, of course, the marquee signing, Kostishin, he's played everywhere in midfield in preseason. So all of these choices made sense, and I think they all acquitted themselves rather well. I think the only one in the starting lineup really who I think maybe didn't have any impact is maybe Aron Gomez, but we'll get onto that, I think. So
yeah, unfortunately we will have to talk about Jags night at the office because it was a little bit of a rough one. But we talked about, so out of the gates, there was some action early on, but overall and over the course of the 90 minutes, we talked a little bit. I think, I mentioned it in the piece, and you even said it like before reading the piece, like on your own, that just like rewatching the game and watching it back, this was a bit of an adjustment for Locomotive fans in many ways, because there was a lower intensity to this match. And I mean, some of that could be chalked up to its first game of the season, trying to manage some of the intensity, trying to manage some of the impact on these players. But the style that Clarhaut plays, and this control, I mean, he said it on the podcast, he said it, across many interviews, that control is kind of the word that he uses to describe his style. It does have a lower intensity, and certainly compared to what was a pretty chaotic style last season of very high octane, like just flying all over the place, lots of goals, concede a lot of goals. Like this will be in a little bit of it'll take a little getting used to for Locomotive fans to watch a lower intensity style.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, again, like, this is the first game. We don't have, quote, our best 11, with all due respect to the players that did make the appearances. But I think it's a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. I think column A of control is absolutely right. I think everything that Brian has told the fans, told us, is what we saw in terms of what he expects players to do on the ball, what he expects players to do off the ball, probably more importantly. But, column B being maybe those sharper players, or those players that we really rely on for attacking threat were not available to us. So that naturally, I think, leads to a bit lower intensity. On top of that, though, I do want to say, I mean, Sacramento Republic, our visitors, they hemmed us in. I mean, we had decent spells, but their line was so high, it was in midfield. And I think that was their game plan, is like, get that first goal, nick that first goal, smother them with this 3-4-3 they were playing. And obviously watch for that long ball over the top, which we didn't do too much. So that kind of played into their hands. And I think that kind of hemmed us in, kind of trapped us a little bit, and maybe made our passes shorter as a result of that. I think Sacramento did a really good job of dominating, and dominating territory, not dominating the game, but dominating territory in those early moments. So, we did break out of those from time to time, and we'll talk about the Zacarias chance. But yeah, it is different, especially when you look at it against this exact opponent. Last year's game against Sacramento Republic on the road was absolutely like hell for leather, attacking.
I needed oxygen at halftime, like that.
Yeah. It was a marked difference, and that's exciting. But also, we shipped 3 goals that night.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a change. I think. Again, I think there is a focus on pragmatism, and I know sometimes that can be a dirty word, like for the more like ideological football fans among us, but I think that's what this squad needs right now, actually, given how last season went. So yeah, lower intensity, but myriad reasons why, I think.
Well, and given, I mean, some of the fitness concerns too, and coming into a 3-day week like this, it wouldn't have been inconceivable last season for us to be talking about the 3 hamstrings that got done in the previous match. Sure. But with that being said, the low intensity style across the whole game, there is a bit of a ramping up, or a switch flipping, if you will, when it comes to this team and the way that they play. We talk about the fact that, and we talked with Brian in his interview about how USL doesn't have as many teams that play a true, that build up through midfield, like that actually have a build up phase through the middle third of the field. And in this game, because of the way that Sacramento were playing, Locomotive were being pressed extremely high, and Sacramento's defensive line was very high. So despite the fact that Brian, I think, has expressed wanting to have that build-up phase and wanting to play through midfield, it often did become, as soon as the press was broken, that midfielder was turning and playing a ball into the final third, which is not much of a build-up phase. And in getting to this early Zacharias chance, it is Eric Calvillo receiving the ball just outside of the final third. A couple of very good touches. I think, John Morsey from USL Tactics, he highlighted like just how good that skill is that Eric pulls off, but brings the ball down and immediately plays in Emmanuel Sinupe down that left-hand side. He gets to the byline and is able to drill across into the center. Zacharias unable to really, like, he opts to try to hit it on the volley instead of like maybe stooping for a diving header or something, maybe something else. And the timing of all of it obviously happens very quickly. Sinupe has hammered the ball like into the center to make sure it reaches its target. And unfortunately, Ricky blazes over the bar, just unable to get the right body shape to slam the chance home. But that chance coming in the third minute, it felt like, okay, we've got a clear way ahead, but maybe on the flip side, Sacramento then also were aware of the dangers kind of from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's one of those chances that's like, did it come too early where we were maybe not like accustomed to the game just yet? It's one of those cliches, but you do have to think about it sometimes when something like that happens. And I want to be clear, like when we talk about low intensity, that is not like we don't mean that as like derogatory, like it's just different, right? Because we did have these exciting moments where we did break the press, and I thought we did that really well consistently. In Sacramento, they were taking that risk of like, yeah, we're gonna park our defenders at the halfway line, but we can hem them in, and we'd say, okay, well, we'll break out of that. And Eric, like you said, he takes a wonderful touch, wonderful turn, and he's someone that I think is gonna be very important this season. But regardless, place Sinupe down the line, and I don't know if maybe the cross is too high. I don't know. I don't think Sinupe really can do much better there. Actually, it's just that's a very hard thing to pull off for a forward. And I wonder if even Lucho would have had trouble with that, because it's just it's flying in. But yeah, maybe Lucho gets that on target, or maybe Josue Aron Gomez. We know Ricky has played in many different positions and is kind of like a utility player in that way. And again, I don't mean that derogatory, but maybe that's a chance that's just like really needing like supreme quality, and perhaps it was just too early. But yeah, I mean, we still threatened, and I think that that's good. We were keeping them honest, but yeah, very early chance, and just unfortunate that it blazes over. You got to get it on target at least, but again, that volley is tough, and I don't know if maybe there's also an argument that there's a different decision he could take there with the header. But again, then you're putting your head in like a real dangerous area because the space between him and Vitiello is not that big. So yeah.
No, yeah, I think it's one of those where proximity to goal suggests that it's an easy chance. Obviously, the pace at which the ball is played and then kind of the height of it does make it a tougher chance to convert. But it was a big chance for Locomotive. The signs were there, and it almost felt like it was a very similar chance that presented itself actually to Manny Sinupe, in that he is played in down the left again, this time with a clear run on goal, basically. And as the ball, I want to say it was Castician who played the switch, but who spots Sinupe after he turns away from his pressers out on the right-hand side. He plays it over to the left. Sinupe's in, and then he takes a little bit of a rough touch, stops as if like the chance has gone, but realizes almost too late that Vitiello has not been very quick off his line, and then catches back up, but in that time has lost like all of his shape, all of his like intention to shoot. And so it was almost it in real time, it looked very strange because it was like that the chance is still there, but Sinupe just for a split second had maybe eased up on it and messed up his timing around being able to shape it into that far corner, that nice, like, the Thierry Henry, whatever, like bending it, from the left to the right. But his timing was thrown by this, like, kind of, it's a little bit of a wonky touch, but it wasn't as bad as I guess he thought it was. Or I guess in hindsight, when he comes off at halftime, and this is why I was kind of thinking, is like, is that when he felt like, does he pull up because he feels something? Because they said it was a hip flexor. I guess that was like the verdict after the game. But it's like, does he actually pull up because he feels something, not because he thought the chance had gone? Because in real time, it looked like, well, what's he doing? He's still got control of the ball. And then Vitiello closes him down by the time he gets back to the ball. But a little bit of a strange one in that, like, it looked like he had a clear run on goal, and then it was a sort of weird set of circumstances that lead to it not being a true chance by the time it was over.
Yeah, in the moment it was like, oh, bad touch, and then Vitiello was able to kind of like recover the space, which after that, you can argue Vitiello was a lot more aggressive after that because it looked like he handled the ball outside the area at one point, which, we can argue about. But yeah, I look, I'm not a physio, I'm not an athletic trainer, I don't know, but like I just think of like elite sprinters, elite athletes in the sport, and how abusing that pace has like come at a cost, like muscular wise, like a non-contact injuries. And Brian says that he felt something in his hip flexor, and so they made that change. They wanted to protect the player, obviously, and he was moving real slow coming out of the tunnel at halftime. So, it might have been that he just actually pulled up. Because if I'm not mistaken, after the chance goes, he's kind of like walking off kind of slow. Mm-hmm. Not in the, and we can play armchair psychologist and say, is he just disappointed with the way that the chance kind of fettered away, or is he actually like, oh, I've pulled something, I've done something, I don't know. But yeah, a good chance, but couldn't make too much of it, unfortunately.
That's and he does come off, as you said, he felt something. Comes off at halftime. Chris Garcia was the one who replaced him. But in the meantime, I'm gonna air myself out. I'm gonna admit to something here. Now, I think that it had already happened in real time, but you can vouch that in the group chat on 44 minutes, I put in the group chat, like, I would kill for a Locomotive goal right now. It would be such a killer for Sacramento Republic right before halftime. Like, that would be game, basically. And basically hit send. Not 20 seconds elapsed, and Cicerone had the ball in the back of the Locomotive net, and I literally just wrote back in the group chat, well, fuck me then. Like,
well, and I was waiting for you to realize it, because obviously I'm in real time and you're like a minute or two behind, and I was like, he doesn't know.
Scotty doesn't know.
Yeah, terrible time to concede. Brian was unequivocal in the post-match that this was a mistake from Locomotive, that he didn't feel that Sacramento had really earned that chance, that it had been given to them. And in real time, I didn't comprehend that. I think I was too busy trying to be like, what just happened, and report on it accurately, or, live tweet it accurately. But I did do my rewatch today, and something that Brian said reminded me, I was reminded of what he said last night, where he said, if you're going to try and be too cute at this level, you get punished. And there is a pass that I don't know if it's Rose or Costician or someone on that far side. Mm-hmm. It's not Novato, because Novato's huge, you can't miss him. I think they try to play like a no-look pass to Eric Calvillo, and Eric Calvillo's not on the same wavelength. It's behind him. from the right wing into the midfield. They were trying to play that pass, and it's behind Eric, and Sacramento latch onto it, and we're out of our shape, and then it goes down that right side. And I think what really is the worst part is everyone going to ground as the ball comes in. I understand Nick Hines going to ground; he's the closest to the ball, but I think maybe we could have stayed on our feet and tried to clear it. Yuma goes to ground. Ben Sefafkovitz goes to ground. Mark Novato is not close enough to Russell Cicerone for my liking, to be honest. Kind of throwing his arms up at the end there at the far post, and it's a tap in for Sacramento's marquee signing from Pittsburgh Riverhounds, who, he had been sending warning shots prior. He had an 8th minute screamer attempt that could have settled right under the bar of Benny Diaz's goal. So
it actually came off like the stanchion or whatever, like behind the goal, skim the top of the bar.
He was Pittsburgh's leading goal scorer last season and Sacramento's marquee signing, and he was a pest. But this particular moment, like, it really didn't take much quality at all. We just kind of let that happen. And I don't think Brian would be mad at us for saying that. The other thing I want to note too about the time of this goal is I felt during the game, I was like, this game state is kind of weird. Like, no one's really dominating or threatening right now. It almost looks like we're trying to get to halftime and regroup, and that is where you can get punished.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at this level, professional soccer, oftentimes you get punished to like the maximum, which is conceding a goal, and unfortunately it just had to happen to us. I think there was a little bit of that too, where we were maybe like switching off just a little bit, like as a group. And so Sacramento are able to capitalize. And then from there, their game becomes time waste and drop back. That high line became a medium block. I'm not going to say low block. I don't think it was quite as negative as that, but that was it for them. And that's a completely fair way to approach a road game like this. So
yeah, especially the first day of the season. I mean, you're talking about a team in Sacramento that went to the U.S. Open Cup final last year. Like, they know how to grind out results. It's not like they were
in hostile places.
It's not like they're like blowing teams away when they're playing MLS sides and stuff like that. Like, you're not going to make a cup run like that by playing super open or anything like that. And that's the thing. I think what will definitely like grind Brian's gears about conceding that goal is that we have played like directly into their hands in a couple of ways. And the first is that like regaining possession on halfway, or I guess like in our defensive half, that is like the design of their press, right? Is to like regain possession in the attacking half of the field. And they are able to, in that first pass, get it to the feet of Rodrigo Lopez, who then has, Gurr as an option, like screaming ahead of him on that overlap down the right. And all in that time, like the reason that Sacramento Republic wants that goal to happen is, as you said, like everybody's out of position, and now everybody's trying to defend this cross across the face of goal while running back toward the goal, which is the worst way to defend that cross. Like, every defender in the world will tell you that they want to be like goal side and like stable before that cross comes in, because then they can react however. And if all three of the defenders that slide, it's like Hines is chasing Gurr because Gurr's on the overlap. Like, understandable, as you said, he's trying to stop the cross. That's like, rule number one. If you can stop it, like, do so.
Yeah.
But once it gets in and it is, Yuma is sliding back towards our goal, Pavkovitz sliding back towards our goal. And so no one is in, like, as you watch it, it's like everyone is sprinting back towards our own goal, which is like the worst case scenario. And it does come, through our own creation. So I think like Sacramento Republic, obviously grateful for the gift, because for large parts of this game, like, and I think obviously soccer is a game of moments, and conceding a goal, as you said, punished to the max, and like it ultimately leads to them losing the game. For the majority of this game, like Sacramento did struggle to create good chances. Like they didn't, it's not like we were fending off or defending for our lives or anything like that. Most of what we did was very measured, which is why I think it's even more maddening on the back half to say, like, there was this one moment where we didn't stick to what we did for 90 minutes, aside from that. So, and there are basically the of the three chances that you can look at in Sacramento highlights, the Cicerone like shot from distance, the goal, and then I'm trying to remember who took the shot, but in the second half they have a chance from a like sort of narrow angle. That comes from a giveaway in midfield also. Like, and so basically anything positive that Sacramento did was off of Locomotive mistakes under pressure. Other than that, like they did not create like anything really significant, because they picked us apart or anything like that. It was in those transitional moments, that they had their joy, and that's how they set up. That's how they, that was their game plan, and to their credit, like they executed it. Like they put us under pressure, and they just needed the one chance to grab the 3 points. And like you said, the timing of that goal is just absolutely killer. Like it would have been killer if Locomotive had grabbed it. Like I'm confident we'd be talking about a 1-0 win if Locomotive had grabbed a goal before halftime. Because Sacramento, like if we had the ability to not have to play in the transitional way that we were, then perhaps we don't concede. But obviously a lot of the conversation though in this game, I mean, moving away from that goal, but a lot of the conversation in this game is just gravitates toward the debutants. So like we've got 4 players making their first ever starts and first ever appearances for Locomotive. I think we actually do have technically a fifth, when Miles Lyons comes on.
Sure, yeah.
Because I don't think he actually made an appearance last season.
No.
So I guess technically 5. But of the 4 starters, I wanted a chance to talk a little bit more in depth about how you felt about each of their performances. Starting at the back, obviously Benny Diaz doesn't get a clean sheet for his efforts, but goalkeeper was such a lightning rod last season. The Evan Newton stuff obviously well publicized. Like there was early season struggles, rightfully, there were big questions being asked. First game of the season, obviously still a ways to go for Benny, but how'd you feel about how he performed, and how he is looking as the number 1 this year?
He's as advertised. He said himself he likes to play with his feet. Certainly did that. Had more touches than Josue Aaron Gomez.
Cruyff turn towards the end of the game as well.
Yeah, I had a couple texts coming through from friends being like, he's gonna give me a heart attack. But hey, that's the modern keeper likes to do those things. I mean, look at Allison, look at Ederson, like things like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's as advertised. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, like everything about this team is as advertised, whereas I think last season we were sold a lot of things that did not come to pass, or that had unintended consequences. But yeah, everything, sure. He's what we expected in terms of sweeping up. He spoke very candidly, though, about kind of building that rapport with his back line, because 2 of them speak Spanish, 2 of them speak English. He's new. Some of them are new. Half of them are new. Yeah. And, he was honest about that, about how that's a work in progress, but that it's coming along nicely. I think there was a little bust up between him and Yuma when he wanted to take a really quick kick, and Yuma was kind of jogging away, which was funny. Honestly, like it's something that happens. It's nothing to like read into. But he described the locker room as his family, his brothers. So yeah, I think on the pitch he's what we expected. Off the pitch, he seems like a good lad. Didn't really have to make many saves. I mean, this is not a demolition by any means. We were not getting peppered with shots. He didn't have to really feel that pressure. And I guess, with that being said, we do still have to see what that would look like, against maybe a team that plays a little more on the front foot than Sacramento Republic. But I can't complain whatsoever. I think he was solid. And I think, again, that's what we're looking for when we see, we keep going back to last season. And, of course, it's in the past. But, I think we're just looking for, no calamities, please. And we didn't have any of those, and so full marks for Benny, I think.
Yeah, no, I think he's off to a good start. Looks a solid choice, and I think in the theme of this year, and just like having calm, having some presence back there, being able to marshal things, like that is what we're looking for. Like less of the heart attacks. Although the Cruyff turn under pressure. A mini heart attack, I guess.
We need
as long as you don't.
We need a GIF of that.
Yeah,
I need to see that back because I must have missed it because I think I'd still be sick right now if I had seen it. But I did get a lot of texts about that. So.
Well, next, let's talk about Mark Navarro. Obviously, coming with in terms of pedigree, biggest on. Of the additions for sure, and probably the largest pedigree of anyone on the team at the moment. Questions around his fitness, obviously, like long term, and making sure that he's going to be available for the team. But we saw him at right back. We speculated a lot over the offseason, like maybe he's a center back. Size wise, he feels like a center back. We weren't by that time. We hadn't really added depth at center back, so it felt like that was the choice. He starts at right back, and early on, we didn't mention it much, but early on, he actually did have quite an influence on how Locomotive attacked, and they were having some joy down that flank with Navarro getting to the byline a couple of times. His crosses not ultimately finding their target, but what'd you make of Mark Navarro's debut? And I mean, he looks like a solution at right back?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we had worried, maybe on the record or off it, that he might get shoehorned in at center back because of his size, and he's a unit. Like you see him out there, and you know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
But I think he was good. I think he's still working on his fitness, and it's my understanding that like he does a lot of training outside of training. His injury concerns are well documented, and so I think he takes that very seriously. And Brian did say he took him off at 66 minutes because he thought that he needed a little more juice, as he put it, from Miles Lyons, and wanted to give Mark some rest. But yeah, I think he was fine. I think there's definitely more to come from him. And it's tough because I mean, if you look at this lineup, right? Let's split the pitch in half. And let's take the midfield and the defense as like units of four. Sure. That left side is all players that know each other. Yuma, Hines, Sanupe, Calvillo. That right side, Pavkovic, Rose, Kostishin, Navarro. Like, that's tough. That's tough.
It's all new dudes.
All new.
and Liam, who's like, I've been here like 6 months more than you.
Right. So I think that is hard. And I think you saw like some instance, like I think there was a time where two people ran into each other, if I'm not mistaken. So I think all of that considered,
sure,
he was all right. He was good. And but I do think that there's more to come from him, especially in the crossing aspect. I think that's just going to take match rhythm, because I do think that's one of his strong suits. Maybe not quite from the byline, but more from like the half space. But and maybe the shape informed that too, of him not being able to like necessarily operate in those spaces because he had more midfielders around him. But he is clearly like a talent. And I think that he can definitely do bits in USL.
Yeah. we'll likely see more from Navarro and Hines or anyone occupying fullback positions when they aren't being occupied by Danger and Damia Villader, which, like, I think of the fullbacking of the fullbacking of the fullback pairings in the league, like that's got to be up there in terms of like menace.
Sure.
So I do think they got occupied with that. Bense, the Hungarian maestro there in central defense, looked like he brought a lot of calm. Obviously, on the goal, there's certainly questions to be asked, but by and large, it felt like a pretty calm, confident performance. And Bense ends the game with the most passes into the final third of anyone on Locomotive.
Yeah, I gotta say, he's got some really nice technique on him with those like clipped balls over the top. He's not just like hoofing it. He is trying to look for a target, look for a space, drop it, kind of airmail it to whoever
Putting a
he's
little
looking
finesse
for.
on it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's solid. He looks very solid. He's another player that has not played as much recently. And so I think I think he'll also, like Mark Navarro, get much better with match rhythm. But for what we saw, last night, I think he looks very solid. I think he's like that Andrew Fox replacement. And it moves Yuma to the left, which is interesting. Because he's gonna be on that right side, or so it would seem. But yeah, 25 years old, Hungarian, like has won trophies in Hungary. And yeah, he just looks very solid, and that's all. Again, I keep using that word, but I think that's really the priority right now. Is just like not being a shambles in our own half, and I think he had a big say in that. And like you said, the passing too, that definitely doesn't hurt. Yeah, he looks good, very good.
I like how proactive he is. Like there were a number of times where Sacramento's trying to play the ball into the feet of a forward or advance, like kind of conduct that pivot from midfield into attack, and he would just step up like into the passing lane and make an interception prior to it becoming a problem. And I think that is just the ability to read those moments and the ability to know when to drop, when to step up, like all of those things, given the fact that he's still building this partnership with Yuma, and is what I would imagine not native English speaker, like who is trying to communicate with two Spanish speakers either side of him with Mark and Yuma. There's a lot that is still going to be built on, but his instincts guided him well in this match, and I think it suggests that he's got what it takes to be that guy, because he just has that air of calm and just like, hey, I'm gonna go deal with it rather than wait and see what this guy does with the ball. So yeah, I really liked what we saw early on, even if it wasn't anything earth shattering. And he is about like maybe not even a half inch. He's about a quarter inch from heading home the equalizer late on from a corner.
Yeah,
like
it just grazes off his eyebrows. Yeah.
Yeah. He's that timing will come too, and I'm sure with a guy that size as well. With the amount of big bodies that we have in the team now, like I'm confident that someone's getting on the end of these.
And I think to your point about proactivity, like pace helps.
Yeah.
Pace helps a lot.
Yeah, it's not everything, but definitely helps.
It definitely helps. Yeah.
And then the debutant who maybe was like at the heart of the most action, and I mean by virtue of the shirt number he's wearing these days, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Dennis Kostishin found himself really at the center of everything in terms of like what Locomotive were doing, involved in a lot of attacks. He was the one who was most often turning into space once the press had been broken. And for whatever reason, in the weirdness of how this data is collected, we don't have the stat line for Dennis.
Jeez.
So whoever needs to fix that, like whatever Opta link is broken, let's just make sure that we get that fixed, because it's going to be a long season if we don't have any stats on Dennis. But his performance, maybe divided opinion the most. So what did you think of Dennis? I mean, we know that you thought highly of him coming out of the San Antonio game, and we talked about that last episode. And did he build on that performance for you?
Yes, I think so. I think he did a lot of the same things that we saw against San Antonio in preseason,
Sure.
which was like really put himself about a lot, and maybe for better or for worse, because I think he was really trying to make things happen, and sometimes he'd be just that half second or full second ahead of his teammates. And again, they're working on that understanding. It will come. But yeah, I could see people maybe coming away with like he's a bit chaotic type vibe. But you need that. You need that sometimes. But all the good things that were happening seem to involve him, and so I think that's hard to look away from. I did see some opinions that maybe he goes down a little bit easy. I think I don't know. I didn't really take that. From his performance, I took that he was getting kicked a lot, or getting stamped a lot, and so I thought he was getting the full-blooded challenge from everyone near him. So I don't know. I mean, I don't begrudge anyone their opinion or anything, but I think he was targeted a little bit because he was so proactive, and he sticks a boot in too, to be fair. He is a willing defender from what we've seen, which is not a lot, to be fair, but I think he was at the center of a lot of good things, and maybe he just has to work on some others.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, his control in tight spaces is very good.
Yeah.
And is going to be needed, because a lot of teams that we play like this, like pressing style, and with it, I think Brian mentioned, like, because we were talking about the San Antonio friendly a little bit, and he spoke about how physical it was and how some of the guys coming from Europe were like learning, like, oh, like they are just gonna kick us, like that's just like they're not used to playing us, like a lot of teams who go out and just like our approach is we're going to foul you. That is like relatively rare, I would say. And Sacramento like took that approach, especially in the second half. They were content to commit fouls in Locomotive's, like as Locomotive tried to play in through midfield, they would just go kick whoever had the ball and then jog back and, just break things up. They were content to do that. So Kostitian was, by virtue of being in possession a lot and being the guy who was like turning as that kind of transition into the attacking phase of play, he was often the guy just getting walloped in there. Unfortunately, well, we'll maybe talk about the refereeing later on, but the reality is, I think he is going to get kicked. I think I don't think it's insignificant that in a team of guys who have been around and guys who have a lot of experience and have seniority, certainly within Locomotive, I don't think it's insignificant that he was taking set pieces. Like, we have good set piece takers in the team. Like, Eric Calvillo, like, comes to mind. Like, he was taking basically all of them last year, alongside Dylan. And then Richie Ryan. So I don't think it's insignificant that Kostitian was the guy, like, on every set piece. There was no question. There was no like standing over the ball. It was just like, yep. So clearly he's got the technique, and he's definitely shown these guys in training that he deserves to be over the ball when those set pieces come. The delivery wasn't quite there on the night. but I think we'll see why he's gotten the nod there. And yeah, no, I'm excited. I think he got a little bit trigger happy on a couple of occasions where I think he's got to sometimes remember that the number 10 on his shirt suggests a playmaker sometimes. And so I think every once in a while, if you're on the edge of the area, maybe look for that extra pass. But he definitely has a good strike on him. He's got great technique. He's got an unbelievable touch in tight spaces. So I do think that he is going to be quality going forward. And it'll be really interesting to see the dynamic as we integrate the likes of Lucho and Petrovic and all these guys who we expect to make a difference in attack, with Kostishin playing as kind of the playmaker out of midfield. That will be I'm excited to see that because he's got good range of passing, good vision, and I think as he puts it together, we'll see a really quality player. But it was just good overall, like to round out this debutant talk. It was just good to see some of these guys that we've only been hearing about the club signing for a long time, and we haven't been able to actually see them in action. But second half, I mean, unfortunately, there's not as much to write home about in terms of it's not really any big like glaring chances. There's a couple of near moments. I can think of a couple of kind of low crosses into the box, which it's one of those where it's like someone just gets nudged off the ball, or the shot just gets blocked, or it doesn't quite reach its intended target. And that kind of happened like for the entire second half, basically. But unfortunately, one player who we expected to obviously be kind of a focal point in this match, and especially with Lucho out, looked to as the goal scorer because he is, in club history terms, the goal scorer. Josue Aron Gomez kind of went missing on the night, and unfortunately for Aron, like, it came obviously bad timing because Locomotive don't get a goal, but he actually ends the night without taking a shot, which just feels so Gomez of him. Like, it's just not typical for Josue to end a night with such like little impact on the game overall.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, he might have had the least touches of everyone who started.
I think it's 29.
Yeah,
he has. I can't say it's for sure the fewest, but it's definitely down there.
Yeah, and I think what we've come to find about Josue is that he really operates better playing off someone, and I think he and Lucho have that understanding, whether it's as a partnership or as like Lucho in ostensibly the center forward position and Aaron coming from wide. That Zacarias Gomez partnership, I don't know if we've ever done that. Have we ever really done that to start? You know what I mean?
Not as a top, not as a two, I don't think.
Yeah, so I think that was strange for him, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's the one that netted both goals against San Antonio, so granted, against a very young San Antonio like youth side basically, but right. It's an outlier for sure. Like, I don't think it's very often, if at all, that Josue ends a game without a shot. But let's just hope that it's an anomaly. But yeah, just not a banner night for him, unfortunately. And yeah, I think really he was getting fouled a lot as well, like 3 fouls against him, so that was breaking up his play a little bit. And yeah, just really didn't make an impact like he would have liked.
Yeah, it's tough because it was one of those things when I was going back to write the piece this morning, I was like, in, this guy and this guy and this guy, and I kind of got to the end of the Locomotive, of reviewing these things, and I was like, I didn't really say a word about Gomez, and like, I can't remember, like, off the top of my head, I can't remember a contribution that was like differential from Gomez, like he ended up out on the right a lot in the first half where he was kind of playing this interchange where him and Costician would get really close to each other. And then Navarro's cross, it kind of ended where it's like you want Gomez to be the guy on the end of the cross or be the guy in the end of the move. And it just so happened, I don't know if it was a way that Sacramento were defending him, if it was like where the space was available, or if, this was something Sacramento game planned for. But every move was ending with someone other than Aron, which is like, in this team, like as it was set up, he is the guy that you want on the end of it. Like he is literally the best goal scorer in club history. Like in terms of sheer volume, he has the most goals.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's the guy that you would want in the end. And like, I can't remember a time. The only thing that I remember was when one of the times when Costician shot towards the end of the game, he shot from like just outside the 18-yard box. And I remember Gomez being upset and yelling at him that he should have passed. But that was kind of it. And so it's an interesting thing. Like, is it a team dynamic thing? Is it something that Sacramento game planned for? Is it something that like they effectively managed, Gomez kind of out of the game or were able to mark him out of the game? Not really sure. The good news is that Gomez has never let like setbacks or anything like that really kind of take him totally out. He plays his way back into his own confidence eventually. It's just, I hope it happens sooner than later, because obviously I want to see Josue Aron Gomez have a big year for Locomotive. But yeah, so in the end, Locomotive not able to make the pressure tell. The second half kind of ticked along, and it looked at times like something was bound to happen. The big talking point in the second half was Zacharias getting just bowled over in the box. And I don't remember who actually made the challenge, but sort of a strange decision. But overall, I think the thing to highlight about the referee is not so much like the one decision, but rather, and you guys know it's a USL podcast. We're gonna talk about the referees. It's just
as we do.
It's just like how it goes. It's inexorable. Like we can't separate referee chat from the game. The decisions, the individual decisions themselves, like, you can explain away whatever you'd like. Really, the issue that I had with the referee was just the sheer amount of fouls that Sacramento was committing versus the amount of bookings that were handed out, which over the course of the 90 minutes, Sacramento commits 16 fouls. I would argue that there were probably some in there that weren't whistled that should have also been called, but they're whistled for 16 fouls. Locomotive have 6. The yellow card count at the end of the game, 2 yellow cards for Sacramento, 1 for Locomotive. 2 of those 3 yellow cards handed out happened in the first half, when hardly any of these, like that total volume of fouls had happened. So a large portion of Sacramento's fouls take place after they have the lead in the second half, and only 1 yellow card was issued against like those, which are in and of themselves, like they are tactical, time wasting. Like there's all sorts of reasons that you start giving out yellows, because it's like, it's super negative. It's slowing the game down. It obviously, like they're not playing the ball because they're trying to foul. And so there's all sorts of reasons that you would start handing out more yellow cards, and yet the referee just like was totally content for Sacramento to carry out that game plan. So that was what frustrated me the most about the referee's performance.
Yeah, and I think before I really address that head on, I think it was almost a compliment to us, because I think about 65 minutes mark is when we really started to up the pressure and move the ball quicker, and I could tell that we wanted to win. Yeah. And we wanted to score a goal and maybe score another and win. And I do give credit to Brian's Chargers for that. because we weren't just resting on it's fine, like let's just keep chugging it along and see what happens. Like we were trying to move the ball faster, and Sacramento's response to that was to kick us.
Yeah.
And break up that flow that we were trying to establish. And they were pretty successful because, like you said, it went without punishment for the most part. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because, like, from a fan's perspective, we're like, this is ridiculous, right? But I asked Brian about it, and I asked him about the penalty shot specifically, and he said, it's hard to call that. And maybe there was, he did get a boot to the ball a little bit, but, he was complimentary of the refs, and, God bless him, because I think he's a professional, and he's not going to pin the result on that. But like for me, yeah, there was a cynicism that crept into the game that I think the referee really needed to have a better grasp on. And I don't think anyone did anything worth us sending off necessarily, but I mean, to me, Zacarias goes flying in the air. I think the force of that is a foul. I think it's a foul anywhere else on the pitch. So in the box, it's a penalty, right?
100%.
And yeah, just some of the stamps and just the little like needly stuff that was happening here and there, like it should have been controlled, I think. And I've spoken with colleagues too that I was like, what did you think? And one said, I like it because I'd rather the game just flow. And we hear that a lot nowadays, especially in the age of VAR, of like, let the game flow, TM. But yeah, I think there is a threshold where like you need to like arrest this kind of behavior.
Right.
And yeah, they were doing it to stop us playing. And it was allowed for the most part. So
yeah. Yeah, well, and that's the thing is like most often in those sorts of situations, a quick like the first really cynical foul, if you give a yellow for it for the first one, then it does cut down on the amount of them for the rest of the game because they're like, oh, okay, well, like if we're not going to be able to do that, we're going to have to figure something else out. And yeah, there were a lot of allowances for, when that's like third yellow card was finally issued, which I don't even remember exactly when. It was in the 75th minute when Lopez, not Rodrigo, Arnold Lopez, his yellow in the 75th minute was the first and only yellow card for Sacramento in the second half. If that comes in the 55th minute instead of the 75th minute, the whole flow of the game is different because like they're like, okay, well, we're not going to be allowed to be as cynical or we're all going to get booked. So I feel like all it takes is like from the referee is going ahead and just stamping your authority on it. Like, okay, like that was cynical or that was stopping an attack or whatever. Like, I'm just going to stamp this out. And the thing that's frustrating is the referee does issue 2 yellow cards in the first half for relatively like minor infractions. And I gladly would have traded Shane White's yellow card in the first half for like a couple more in the second. And Vitiello's time wasting started the second half kicked off, and was comical in terms of like he didn't even give the symbolic yellow card to the keeper for time wasting, like which we all know it is symbolic, like they'll never send anyone off for time wasting, but like
right,
he didn't even acknowledge like that it was going on. It was just like a known thing where the crowd was increasingly like losing their patience with he's taking an hour on every goal kick.
Yeah.
It just wasn't punished. So yeah, for me, like there was no, I think the Zacarias shout probably a pen. But even that aside, I just don't think it was a well officiated game from the perspective of like managing the flow and keeping the game moving by like issuing a quick yellow card for all the cynicism. But yeah, not to be. The Seriously Loco match preview. The good news, if we can consider it that, is they get to bounce back straight back and get to show themselves or show what they can do immediately. Because Wednesday night, Colorado Springs Switchbacks visit the SWUP. One of two teams that have not taken the field yet this year alongside New Mexico United, so they did not play on opening weekend. So we don't have any data on this Colorado Springs team yet, but I mean, between the manager change, all the personnel changes, it feels like we're practically playing like an expansion team here.
Yeah, I mean, there's some bits and pieces about them that is interesting. I mean, Romario Williams, I think, didn't get to show what he can do at New Mexico United. I think, and maybe there's a concern that his best days were 6 years ago with Charleston Battery, but
sure,
he's still, I think, on paper, a signing that makes sense because a lot of goals have left this Colorado Springs Switchback side. Haji Berry, Elvis Amo, a good player as well, and Michigan Galena is gone. So, Romario has his work cut out for him, but I still think he has something to offer for sure. Duke Lacroix, that's a really underrated signing for me. Like, I think he's very good, probably one of the best left backs in the league, very experienced in the league, and chips in with goals and assists. I mean, what more could you want coming over from Sacramento? So, yeah, they're an interesting side. They're I don't know that they're going to be as strong, obviously, because losing Haji Berry, that's huge, like I said. But at least there is some continuity with, as you have on the outline here, Stephen Hogan kind of transitioning into that technical area, having built the team previously. So you would think that would help.
Sure.
And also, like you said, they haven't played yet, and the boys that spoke with the press after the game and Brian were asked that, is that an advantage? And they seem to think that maybe it could be, because we've got 90 minutes under our legs and they don't, in a competitive space. So,
sure.
And again, Colorado are yet another team that we have a very good record against. I mean, we got trounced last time out, last October, but other than that, it's been...
The less said about that, the better.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. But otherwise, though, it's a matchup that's been kind to us for the most part.
Yeah. I for one, am really looking forward to a Brendan Burke less Colorado Springs team, because his touchline antics, if you will, like, I'm not one to, there's obviously a lot of like talk in world football about like Klopp, Arteta, like, is this or that appropriate? Burke was just like always mad regardless of what was actually going on. And the difference being that well, especially in Colorado Springs, they had the field mics like down next to the technical areas. So like you just heard everything. Like whenever he was going off on the fourth official or whatever, you heard the whole thing, which is just like, so I'm glad the tantrums won't be televised anymore.
Where'd he go? Houston,
yeah. Okay. He's an assistant over there, which I think, over the course of the last few years, we've learned that is the way to try to land an MLS head coaching job, is to be an assistant in MLS.
Apparently.
So, with that being said, yeah, as you said, tons of goals went out of this team, but they have brought some interesting pieces in. I do think in terms of the in terms of the attacking replacements, like Romario Williams, Malik Foster, Deshane Beckford, I think you're talking about guys who were parts of teams. Now, Romario Williams, obviously proven goal scorer at this level, but as you said, he's a few years removed from it now. Malik Foster and Deshane Beckford obviously like played on really good sides last year, but were kind of a piece in a really good side. And when you're talking about like we're trying to replace, in the aggregate, to borrow the Moneyball term or whatever, it's like you're trying to replace Haji Berry, Ingalina, Elvis Amo. Like these are in and of themselves, it would take three, USL players to match Haji Berry's attacking output from the last couple of seasons. There is a significant like delta here that I don't think they've necessarily solved for.
Yeah.
The thing is that they do have guys that, it could be a situation where it's like, if given the keys, will this guy become the guy? And I think that's the question, is like, will Romario Williams like refine that form? Could, Deshane Beckford become a more important piece of Colorado Springs like attacking puzzle? I do think the one other thing that is interesting about this team is, and maybe there's not enough people left on the roster for it to matter, but the end of last season, they were like horrid for a long stretch. They were really bad. They limped into the playoffs, and they somehow they pulled it together in the playoffs. Like they somehow got it done, because I think everybody on form was saying like, these guys are going out in the first round. Like this is set to be one of the most disappointing like runs. They still put it together. Like they did their thing in the playoffs. Credit to them. But even, when they still had a bulk of this team, they struggled down the stretch. I don't know. I guess all I'm saying is that they are prone to like being shocking. And that's yeah. Now they obviously, beat the crap out of us like in that horrid stretch of form. So who knows? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they actually line up, who's kind of won, because even with a new manager, it's tough to tell like, okay, well, who's climbed above who in the pecking order, like, because Burke, I'm sure, had his guys, and it's like, of the guys that are still around, who's competing with the new guys, anyways, it'll be really interesting. And it'll be kind of like a new team, because all these, they have had to, out of necessity, make a lot of signings this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be a boon for us of like facing this side that are still coming to grips with like all the change,
Sure.
All up and down the pitch and off it as well. And it's a Wednesday night match. I don't know historically if we've had like the best Wednesday night like record. It seems like something that we wouldn't necessarily like be great at. I don't know. I don't have the data in front of me, but yeah, maybe it's a good thing to just have this opportunity immediately to respond to the opening night loss.
I don't have the numbers, but I do know that anecdotally, I feel like we are good on 3 days rest.
Yes. So yes, the time between matches, I think last season at least
traditionally
we were better. It was when we would have 2 weeks off that we'd come back looking like a pub team. So yeah, I do think that will continue, to be honest, but as far as being good, going down the stretch. But I think something that Brian said is that we need to get fresh quick, which
Sure.
I think there is a worry that like forward depth may be still an issue, because it's a marathon, not a sprint, and we don't want to burn people out too soon, but we also need to like win games. So because we know what that's like to get into a hole early. So the team selection, I mean, I don't envy that job, right?
Yeah.
But to what Brian said is that his staff have already been looking very much into this next matchup while he focused on the task at hand. And I have no doubt we'll come with a plan.
Well, and to that end, Locomotive, interesting. Obviously, the lineup that they did play, but also almost equally interesting were the players that weren't involved. Obviously, Lucho Solonyak and Peter Petrovic both are said to be in contention for Wednesday, and they're kind of day to day at this point. But also Artem Holod was not involved in the game against Sacramento, not on the bench either. So interesting in that that one wasn't really mentioned. So not really sure what's going on there. But hopefully some forward depth. Hopefully some forward reinforcements coming in this next match. Lucho and Petrovic, I think both of their involvement will be welcome if we can get them healthy. If not, then hopefully they will still be in contention for when Detroit City visits on next Saturday. The back to back. It's a quick turnaround, but big opportunities for this Locomotive side to still get off to a good start despite the opening night loss.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel okay about it. I think that if we continue to do the things that we've been working on, it will pay off. I think the goals will come for sure.
Agreed. Well, I think that about brings us to the end of our show. If you have enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Look us up on Twitter and Instagram at Seriously Loco. We'll post all of our stuff on both platforms. We're also on Facebook, and we're getting some away days are still a little bit away, but we are planning on restarting our watch parties for away matches. We'll talk about Louisville City because that happens to be my birthday. But other than that, we are planning on having watch parties for the away days. So keep an eye out for that. They'll be on our Twitch, Twitter, and on our recently reclaimed YouTube channel as well. So anyways, we've got some good stuff in the works. Find us on whatever platforms you love. Hit us up with any questions, any of that headed into the Colorado Springs match, and we will talk to you hopefully after a big Locomotive win on Wednesday night. But until then, stay loco.